Okay, Martin, what do you think? Should we start?
Yes, let's start. Use the time effectively.
Yes, the German way. All right, welcome everybody for today's online live demo. We are very happy you joined us. And today we'll tell you a little bit, or specifically Martin does, about the new key features and improvements we have for you. So let's see what today's agenda is saying. Yes, first of all, Martin will present a short overview and gives us some insights about the new key features and improvements. After that, we directly dive into the live demo in our Swarm Control Center. And after that, you can ask us any questions you may have. You can use the chat for that. Don't be irritated. The chat is moderated, so the questions are not visible for the others, but we will see them and we will, of course, answer to them. All right.
Great. So let's have a look. Hello from my side as well. I will show you first what we have done the last couple of months. So as most of you remember, we had the last release mid of November. And since then, we were dedicated to work on following topics. We were especially focusing still on parking with a clear focus to have the single and multi-space parking extended in order to have really the option parking to create parking multimodal parking scenario where you can combine entry and exit parking, so barrierless parking with single and multi-space. For example, to have your capacity counted with entry and exit parking, but still being able to see the occupancy state of dedicated parking spaces as, for example, electric charging parking lots or other special parking spaces. What we have done there as well is to increase the single and multi-space detection accuracy and as well the parking space coverage. So what we have done is to create a new model which you can select, which is taking a higher resolution input in order to be able to detect the vehicles better and on further distance. So to have a bigger coverage of your parking space, being able to have more parking spaces detected in one camera, as well as being able to have a better accuracy. We have we have added a lot of new data to our model in order to have different perspectives and everything to have a clear accuracy where we now reach around 95% on our test cases according to our specification, but I will show you more in a second. Other features we have added there, which are kind of complementary to the key features, is one thing that we have created an easier event configuration where we are going to provide you guys templates for traffic and parking use cases in order that it's more clear what kind of event trigger you need to set for which use case. You will see this more later in the demo in the tool in live. Another topic which is around parking and very important is that we have extended the ANPR feature, so the automatic number plate recognition, as well known as ALPR, automatic license plate recognition, to all European license plates. So we are now really detecting all European license plate, and we have improved this license plate reading a lot. And as well, we have extended it to outdoor, that you can have installations outdoor with a clear specification from our side, as well as a setup guideline, which is very important for outdoor installation, that the camera is set up in the right way and you can have the installation done in the way to reach the best accuracy. So there we have really a new setup guide to have clear instructions. What do you need to take care at the installation in order to have the best accuracy on your side. On top, we have implemented the feature speed estimate for our traffic segment, where you can now really have dedicated areas to say, I want to have traffic counting, but I want to as well see the speed estimate with it. So you have the option, for example, in special areas around schools or something else, to implement the speed estimate in order to know how fast in average your traffic is moving, or in which speed segment you have how many how many vehicles moving in that speed segment. But we will see that later as well in the demo. On top, we have a couple of improvements to our existing use cases, which is that we have improved the traffic model, especially on people and rider detection, so people and bicycle, where we were focusing really especially on people to have a better way of counting people across pedestrian crossings, for example. So we have created test scenes to have origin destination counted across pedestrian crossings in order to know that we detect the people and the bicycles stable enough from A to B, which is key in order to have a proper counting. On top, we got a lot of feedback from you guys after the last launch, as well on the whole control center, and there were a couple of small usability topics we have included as well in this launch in order to have an improvement. I will show some of them later in the demo. But before we jump into the live demo, we cannot show a demo for how the detection improved, to be honest. So I show here a couple of pictures on the single space, multi-space detection, where you really see these are real-world scenarios where you have parking and you see that the detection works very well. What is really important to have the accuracy according to what we say, the 95%, is that you follow the detailed specifications of our documentation, because clearly camera placement is always key in order to have a good detection rate. And as well, in order that you know what is the coverage of parking spaces, we have extended this specification of single and multi-space detection in order to get a view on what is important, especially occlusions and stuff like this, in order to be aware what you need to take care in installation in order to have the best outcome. So this is included now in our documentation. If anyone is interested, have a look in the documentation. If you can't find it, feel free to come back to our support. We will guide you towards the good information. Okay, so let's jump to the live demo, to the control center. So in the control center, in the demo, I will show you now the two different scenarios, the two features with the single and multi-space, from the event configuration to seeing the data in the dashboard, and the same we are going to do for speed estimation. So I start with single and multi-space. So at the end, as you know, last time we have shown you the data analytics where you can create your own dashboard. And we have here in the parking scenario, the demo parking utilization dashboard, which we created, which is really based on entry and exit counting to have the capacity of a parking garage. As already said before, now you're able to have this multimodal case in order to combine the entry and exit, but as well have single and multi-space data in the same scenario. So you can see we have added in the cameras now as well to the parking entry and exit, two cameras which are taking care of the electric charging parking lots. So we can have a look at this, and I will show you on this example how you can configure the single and multi-space parking. So this is in the garage next to our office. What you can see here is that you have the three electric charging stations, and we have now in the event configuration new options. So first of all, for single space multi-space, we have included the new model, which is the parking single and multi-space. So again, what is the good thing? So you can still use the traffic and parking model as well for single space, but with the parking single and multi-space is really you have a bigger coverage in the area, as well as we have trained this model dedicated on top-down views, which is more important for outdoor installations. So clearly I would recommend to take the parking single and multi-space model for having a single space detection. At the end, with the event triggers, you can see now we have created two segments, which are parking events and traffic events. And you have then in the parking events or traffic events, the options which are the good event triggers for your scenario. So for parking, for example, you have the counting line with AMPR or without AMPR in order to have the barrierless parking, so entry and exit counting, or you have the region of interest for single space and multi-space. We have now created this region of interest for you guys, a dedicated single space or multi-space. In the backend, they still stay the same, but we have there a couple of changes, especially in the event scheme. If you want to use a parking region of interest, there is a change in the event scheme. So there you need to take care in the integration, but don't mind if you already have a single space installation with usual region of interest, it will still continue to work, but there are a couple of pros in order to say, I will change to parking region of interest, which I can tell you a bit later what these good points are for the parking region of interest. But if you click now on a single space parking region of interest and you want to set it, you will see you have the trigger settings. In the trigger settings, there's the region of interest type. So it's the parking region of interest type or the generic one. This is now really this topic with having the event scheme in the backend. So how you will get the data sent. What is the difference? That for parking region of interest, only vehicles are taken into consideration. So if a person is in this region of interest, it will not be occupied. For the generic one, all our classes we identify are considered. On top, for the parking region of interest, we have implemented that you will get each 10 seconds, so on a time trigger event based, the information if the space is occupied or not and how many vehicles are in this space. In order to not get this for all of the configured parking spaces, imagine you have 20 parking spaces, you will get one single event with all the information, as well with an aggregated information on what is the capacity and what is the current utilization. So as you can see, for the single and multi-space option, you can now put a maximum capacity into the region of interest. So for single space, clearly, it is maximum capacity 1. If we change this to 2, you see the color is changing because now it's changing to a multi-space. So you're telling in this region of interest, I'm expecting 2 vehicles. And then if only 1 is in there, the occupancy is 50%. So this is really what has been changed to the event triggers. There are a couple of more topics where I will not go into detail today, but we will have you have the option to see in the documentation. And anytime, if you have any dedicated question, feel free to ask them in the chat now. We can answer for sure a couple of them in detail afterwards as well. And otherwise, our support will always be happy to help you on your dedicated questions. Now, as you have configured these parking spaces, you can go back to the dashboard. And as you know, the current parking utilization is can be calculated at any point. So saying either you decide that the parking utilization is calculated on entry and exit parking, but now, if imagine you want to have a full parking space and the full utilization is only calculated with single space and multi-space, you have now the option to choose the utilization calculated either on barrierless parking, so entry-exit counting, or on single space, multi-space parking, where you can see now in this scene, we have 6 parking spaces configured. With the capacity, we have configured maximum capacity 6, and 3 of them are currently occupied. But as this is the parking garage now, I will keep it on the entry and exit counting with the capacity. But what I want to know as well on top is which of the parking spaces is occupied or not, in order to guide the people in the parking garage with their electrical vehicles to the good parking space to charge them. You will see here a grid to see the occupancy status, if it's occupied green and occupied red, and if it's free or vacant green. There are as well the options that you have a state in between. Why? Because you have the option to have the multi-space. So for example, a space with 10 vehicles capacity, but only 5 are occupied. So you have a 50% occupancy level. So this is why the grid can as well show different colors. So this is the good point. You can now really combine these two segments. Good, that's for single space and multi-space. Then I will quickly change to the traffic scenario for all of you who are quite interested in the speed estimate, because to be honest, that's a great feature. Seeing as well, what can I do with the speed estimate and how does it work? So speed estimate works with any traffic counting you will configure, but you need to take care in the configuration on some dedicated steps I will show you now. And then you can see how the data can be retrieved in data analytics and as well then via our API. So I will show you this on the example of our highway, where you can see now here we have implemented the speed line. What is the speed line? So at the end, the speed line works as following. We have in the traffic event the option to have a counting line and optional speed with it. So if I add this counting line, now a new one, you can see, okay, this counting line, you have in the trigger setting the option to enable or disable speed estimate. So if you enable speed estimate, there will be a second line popping up. This is needed because what you need to do is to calibrate the distance between the two speed lines in order to get the best accuracy in the speed estimate as possible. So what you need to do, you need to measure the distance between these two lines. In the best way on streets, it's possible to do it via the markings. In some countries, they are normed quite well. So sometimes you can even take it out of the norm and estimate it without going there. For some cases, maybe it makes sense to measure the distance during the installation and then really calibrate it there. Here you can put then the distance in meters. So for example, say, okay, it's 5 meters. And then what is happening, always when an object is moving both lines, there is a traffic count generated. And with the traffic count, so the usual crossing line, counting line event, with this, we will then give a speed estimate as a parameter with it. So any one of you using MQTT messages to integrate it in your third-party systems, you can as well get the data from the counting line event with the speed estimate. For anyone using the data analytics, you will then have the option in the in the dashboard to add for any traffic counting. So if I create a new widget, I can have the traffic counting. So usual saying I want to have the counting of this counting line per day, and I want to have it per direction. And what you can do now is to have include average speed in data. So what you will see that you had on the 24th of February, 12,000 something out counts, and the average speed of these 12,000 cars were 103 kilometers per hour. So you can see in difference of your traffic counting what are my average speed. But what is good as well, that you can have it without grouping and you can put the data segmentation, which is the speed. So you see in different speed segments, how many counts did you have in different speed segments? And on top, you can see the average speed in between these segments. So for example, you see you had between 80 and 90 kilometers per hour. You had more than 4,000 counts in this segment. And the average between these segments is 84 kilometers per hour. So this is really to see in which segments do I have how many vehicles passing. So for example, at the school area where there is a speed limit of 30 kilometers per hour, you can see then, for example, how many cars you have which are moving between 50 and 60. If there is a high amount, it's a dangerous situation, for example. On top, what you can do, there is a new widget type, the speed estimation. So if you don't care about the counts and you only want to know the average speed of your area, you have the option to put the speed estimation of this line, and then really say over a given time frame, how is the average speed changing? So for example, you can have the line chart and see how this average speed is changing over time in order, for example, to see how my traffic is flowing on different areas. For example, during morning, it's always very low speed, so for example, 50 kilometers per hour is the speed limit, but they're moving with 20. So maybe the traffic flow is not working well because it's congestion, and during the day it's working well, and in the afternoon again not. So it will give you an indication how the traffic is flowing. And this you can combine in any traffic scenario dashboard with the other information of the use cases, with a simple traffic count, or for example, a model split, as we have seen as well already last time. So with our use cases we offer. Right, so this is the speed estimates. The last thing I want to show you are the small usability topics. For some of you, this might be the most interesting because usability is important. So what we have included now is that in the device configuration table, you have the option on the top right to have the auto refresh. So what is the auto refresh doing? It's really automatically refreshing each 10 seconds the whole table. For example, when you're at the installation site and you're installing a sensor, you do not need to refresh all the time your tab in order to see if the box is coming online or not. You will see it then immediately. On top, we've got the feedback that with the new feature we have launched last time to filter the table, we were not able to see if a filter is active or not, and the filter was not persisted. So if I filter now, for example, on parking, you see here on the top right that there is a filter applied and you can clear the filter. But as well, if you do another action, for example, changing the data analytics, go back to device configuration, the filter is persisted. As well, if you go to a configuration of a scene and go back, the filter will still be persisted, and you can clear it here easily in order to see all of them again. Then another small thing is that we have added for integration reasons. So for any one of you integrating our data into your systems, you need always the unique identifier, so the UUID. So we have added all of them into the control center in order to access them easily. And we have added a copy option to click and copy it quickly to where you need it. So this is for the device ID. We have it as well for the camera ID, and on top we have it for the event types. So for example, each counting line has a UUID. You will see this in the configuration. Configuration, another thing which was for some of you a bit of pain in the ass, I would say almost, is that if you were in the configuration and you added some couple of event triggers, or you changed the configuration and you didn't save the changes, but you closed the window, the safes were not changed and you were not aware of that. So what we did now is that you get an alert, hey, you have changed your configuration. Are you sure you want to leave the page? Now I can say, no, I'm not sure. I want to go back and save, and then I can leave the page. Or you just say, okay, I want to delete them. And last but not least, we have included a reboot button here in the control center, which enables you remotely rebooting the box. So in case sometimes something is not working, you might be able to reboot the box. All of you know that sometimes if you have your PC rebooted, it works again and nobody knows why. What is really important, this is not replacing the support. So clearly, if there is an issue, feel free to come back to our support. We are quite keen to get to know the issues in order to fix them in general. But this will give you kind of a bit of an independence to reboot the box remotely. Yeah, I would say that's it in a nutshell. And let's see if we have a some questions.
Yes, sure. First of all, thank you for guiding us through the new features and changes. Okay. The first question would be where exactly everybody can find the guide you mentioned in the documentation. Maybe we can share a link or something like that.
Sure, we can share a link. Anyhow, so the link is this one of the documentation. We can share it afterwards in order that all of you have it.
Mm-hmm.
At the end, where you can find the guides, so the setup guides or the specifications, it's always here in the use case tab. You have the traffic intelligence, parking monitoring, people entry exit. So for example, we were talking about parking. If you go here, you have now the setup barrierless parking with ANPR, so the ANPR feature. Here you have the general information, what you need to take care of in the camera setup, in the configuration, and in the retrieving of the data and data analytics. In the camera setup, you see a couple of things on which resolution you should put on your camera, what is the installation height and distance you should take care of, what is the angle, which should not be higher or lower. So really how to, so the position of installing the camera. And on top for ANPR, as said, we have a dedicated guide of recommendation, which is showing how is our ANPR feature working in order that you get an understanding, which helps sometimes to install everything. And as well, some typical setup, for example, for a single lane, you can do it from the side, but if you want to have 2 lanes monitored with ANPR, you need to do it from between the lanes, so not from the side, otherwise the angle is getting too big. And as well, a couple of camera setup things in order that you can say, what, for example, what you should take care in ANPR to set the good exposure speed. So we guide you which is the good exposure speed to set for the camera.
Okay, perfect.
And the same quickly in the single space parking, you have here the example on how to install the camera, as well with some standard examples showing what you should take care with occlusions and having some examples.
Okay, very nice. Perfect. Thanks a lot, Martin. Next question would be, does the speed option cover all identified mobility types?
Yes. So it doesn't matter if a person is moving across it, a bicycle or any other vehicle like car, truck or whatever, it's covering all of them.
Okay, perfect. And the next question would be if the average speed calculation is done with the 85 percentile method, which is the EU standard.
So the average of the speed, what we do at the end, our speed estimation is an estimation, which is clear. So it's not, it will not be any speed enforcement topic or anything because you calibrate it. So what we do is really to take the speed and average it. So there is no 85% topic in between.
Okay. Thank you. Then we have the next question. If one already has a single space installation configured, how does it work now with the new setup?
Good point. So at the end, if you have a single space configuration already in place and you have used the region of interest as they have been, it will still work. There will be no changes. But in order to have the good points of the parking region of interest, to only get one event for all your parking spaces, you need to change it to the parking region of interest event type. What will be the case then that in your integration you need to take care because the event will change. In the documentation you find the link to the event types. For example, you see here, let's see where it is. Region of interest, that is the usual region of interest event type, where you see in the objects all the classes you have included. For the parking region of interest, it will look a bit different. You have for each region of interest the capacity, how many vehicles are there at the moment, the region of interest name and the ID. And on top, what you will have is an aggregated version to say, okay, out of all my region of interest in total, what is the total capacity and the total vehicles in order to give a total utilization. So clearly there needs to be a small adjustment. We will proactively come back to the ones we know which have single space implemented already to see and support you guys in changing that if needed. And otherwise, if any one of you, which we will not proactively contact, please feel free to come back to us. Clearly, we support you and guide you to have that ready and as well be able to use the good improvements.
All right, and then we have a last question, which is good timing because we're a little over the time, but still, what is the calibration button in the example with the electric parking stations?
Good point. Thanks for the one taking care. I almost forgot it. So at the end, what you mean is following. In the configuration, this is a new feature. I almost forget to show you. Especially for single space, this is good to know where to put the region of interest, because the center point of the detection of the object must be in a region of interest in order that it will be occupied. So you can click here now on calibration, and you will see as an overlay the detection boxes with the center point. So clearly, when you do an installation, it's very helpful if there are a lot of cars parked, because you see, for example, here, now it's not useful because there is no car parked, but you see there is a detection box around this car here on the right, and you see the yellow line. This is how the center point is moving. What is then important that you put the region of interest in order that the center point is covered. So this is supporting you in the installation in order to have a easier calibration, because we know, especially with the perspective, sometimes it's hard to put the region of interest to the good place. So this is the first step for you guys in order to have a good calibration.
Perfect. Thanks for clearing that up. So I think we have come to the end of the live demo. No more questions. So hopefully we did answer all of them, at least for the moment. So yeah, just a quick thank you for joining us today. And if you have any questions, maybe later, feel free to drop us a mail or anything else. And then I would say, see you next time.
Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.